I remember a study came out of the University of East Anglia by Benjamin Santer, who's one of the great pushers of this whole idea of humans causing global warming. And he tried to recreate the weather or the pressure patterns for the North Atlantic, because he said, you got the most weather stations around the North Atlantic. The model produced huge, massive, high-pressure systems that didn't exist in reality. So even then, the models were not able to reproduce the past conditions. So if it can't predict forward, why would you anticipate that it could predict forward? This is the difficulty. So hindsight forecasting. And by the way, that's in the same idea of reproducible results, that you must be able to reproduce the results of these scientific tests. Every CO2 prediction, that is how much is going to increase, has overestimated the increase. They said, CO2 levels will rise at this rate. They haven't even come close. But the computer models all assume, they build in, they say, if the CO2 increases, then the model will have an increase in temperature. That's built in. Yet we know it's not correct. So the computer models can't possibly accurately predict. It's built in, a guaranteed failure. But they still continue to produce these models and use them. And here's Lord Monckton's recent attempt to show the disparity between the IPCC predictions, the pink lines at the top, and the actual effect. And you'll see the similarity between the dark red line and the line in the Friends of Science graph. And you see the cooling from 2000 to the present. So every prediction has been wrong. So surely that should make them stop and say, well, hang on a minute, there must be something wrong here. But no, it doesn't. The IPCC continues to be the source and Bible for all government policies. And here's a computer modeler by the name of Tim Palmer. He's a climate expert at the University of Reading, which is one of the major climate modeling centers in the world. Look what he said. I don't want to undermine the IPCC, but the forecasts, especially for regional climate change, are immensely uncertain. Now, the significance of that for people that know about models is he's talking about local regional models. Say a model for Alberta or a model for Western Canada. The regional models, those are always argued as being more accurate than the global models, the general circulation models. But he's saying even those are immensely uncertain. So in other words, you've got pieces of the puzzle, but you can't even accurately define that piece of the puzzle. But then you're telling me that the whole picture is right? It's completely illogical. Public opinion. All the polls, whether it's Britain, wherever they've had elections recently, the polls have showed. This is a poll by the Pew Center. And the Pew Center, by the way, is a left-wing, American left wing, which means it's probably centrist in Canada. This is their push. But look where environment, not just climate change, but environment is, look where it is on the list of concerns for the public. It's not in their purview at all. And then when you look at global warming, it's right at the bottom of the list. So that's another reason why the science is not getting out there, because they don't understand it and they don't care. It's not a concern for them. I'll just go through this very quickly, but here's a simplified diagram of atmospheric climatology. Solar radiation input at the top, left corner. Go and look at the 16 climate models that are used for world climate. Each of them shows a different value for the amount of energy coming from the sun to the top of the atmosphere. And the range of variability is 10 watts per square meter, which far exceeds all the total energy that humans produce. So right at the input level at the top, there's disagreement. And then you come down, why would you focus only on CO2? Look at the things that are underlined that relate to water vapor, precipitation. That's virtually ignored. Water vapor is by far more important than CO2. But go and look at Environment Canada's website and say, water vapor. Well, yeah, it's the biggest greenhouse gas, but it's not important. They say that right on their website. It's unbelievable. That's my tax money. Sorry, didn't mean to personalize it. So when you start to look at the complexity of this, you start to understand what I'm talking about. What's the major reason for the focus on CO2? This man who's familiar to all Albertans and Canadians, now living in China because the American government want to put him in jail because he and his son and Kofi Annan's son were involved in the Iraq for food oil scandal. So Maurice Strong is taken off to China. But he said, isn't the only hope for the planet the industrialized nations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? How would you do that? How do you shut down the great engine of the Western developed societies? You can't squeeze the fuel line, people will scream immediately. Just look at the increase in gas prices, what effect that had. But if you can show that the byproduct of that industry is destroying the planet, then you can shut down those industrialized nations. And what's the byproduct? They focus on CO2. That's why it's become the focus. That's the political motive behind it. And Maurice Strong, he said when he was interviewed by Elaine Dewar for her book, Cloak of Green, he said, well, why didn't you run for political office? He said, you can't do anything as a politician. He said, I'm going to the United Nations. I can do whatever I want, get all the money I want, and not be accountable to anybody. And he set up the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And what he did was, when he wrote the rules, and any of you that have been involved in government commissions of inquiry, and I've done dozens of them in my life, and the very first one I did, we were looking at Dauphin Lake. And they dictated how that commission of inquiry was going to come out, because they set the terms of reference. That's how the bureaucrats and the politicians control the outcome. The commission, of course, diverts the heat from the public. Oh, well, we've got a commission looking at it. Can you oh, no, I can't comment until the commission report comes out. Well, when is it going to be out? Well, 4 years from now. Oh. Go and look at what happened with the guy that did the Warren Commission and the Kennedy inquiry. They said, well, what about this? Oh, no, that wasn't in our terms of reference. But that's huge. Okay? Look at this term of reference that Maurice Strong wrote for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. A change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to humans. In other words, he narrowed the focus only on human causes of climate change, on CO2. That's how the misdirection was achieved. So that's the prevailing view. It allows people to say changes we see are not natural and beyond any previous record. Which, of course, what you hear, oh, that's not natural. It's more rapid than ever. It's more rapid than ever. Never true. But by the time you come out saying, oh, there's that skeptic again. Don't listen. What this has allowed them to do is to present what is natural as unnatural. That's what's going on. And, of course, it guarantees they're always going to be right, because tomorrow there's going to be more natural events. And, you know, the experts sit there and say, well, that's perfectly natural, nothing. But we don't see it that way. That's not how our scientific view of the world has been created in our education system. Environmentalism is a new paradigm, absolutely essential. It's been stolen from us. The environmental groups present themselves as the only ones that care about the environment. I'm attacked, oh, you don't care about the environment, you don't care about the children, about the future. So how dare you do that? How dare you take that moral high ground? But that's what's happened to us. We've been bullied into silence. Look at these oil companies and energy companies and companies that are bullied into playing the game. Even now putting out ads that are completely wrong scientifically because they don't want to appear not to care about the environment. It is really frightening. And it's always been the tail wagged the dog. But you know what we got now is the flea on the hair on the tail is wagging the dog. We all care about the environment, absolutely essential. But it's been stolen from us. And my concern is that as the misrepresentation of it was out there, the credibility of science will suffer seriously. They'll say, we don't believe anything you tell us. That's why it's essential that Friends of Science continue to operate and continue to get out the accurate science and put it in the larger context. And I'll just leave you with this one last cartoon from The Spectator again, which says, let's hope we can bring about the collapse of the West before the West collapses. And Osama bin Laden. And of course it speaks to, in my mind, it speaks to the carbon tax and putting the whole Western economies in jeopardy for a completely non-issue. Thank you so much for your attention.